Electrocast. In this ad for the Mobile One brand, I have 30 seconds to talk about driving, which might be what you're doing right now. Maybe you're in the car, you're free, you're in control, on an open road with an open calendar. Your mind is wandering, and you're going with it. Or maybe you're stuck at work, in meetings, or emails, or worse, meetings about emails. And if that's the case, there's only one question. Why? Mobile One, for the love of driving. Visit loveofdriving.us/radio to learn more.
Hold on to your butts.
We are changing the course of history as we see it. That is what Wesley demands.
Now this affects Iris. Iris, where are you?
What you feel only matters to you. I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world as it is vexing enough.
Iris, I have a tip for you.
Don't take drugs!
Or whatever movies with Wesley and Iris.
What up and welcome to Halloween 2024 here at Or Whatever Movies. I'm your co-host, Iris, and I'm here with my older brother,
Wesley.
Today, we're talking a movie from 1974, horror classic, The Head Cheese.
You mean Leatherface.
You mean the Leatherface? You told me I had to use the prefix the.
No, you have to use the prefix the when saying the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I haven't been looking forward to this discussion, even though I was going to taunt you and say, come on, Wes, it's going to be a fun trip.
Man, is it because the Texas Chainsaw Massacre feels like the other side of horror? It feels like this is the wrong side of the tracks. This is too much. Every other horror classic, so to speak, everything that's been cheesed up with its million sequels, this one being no exception really in that aspect. But the Texas Chainsaw Massacre feels different and worse. Like this is the one that no matter how much convincing, you'd never be able to get the sneak to sit down and watch.
No way. There's no possible way. Did you get Kelly to sit down and watch this?
Yeah, a couple of years ago. Now, revisiting this for the purposes of our discussion, I was like, hey, you want to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre? And she said, no, thank you. And those reasons, her reasoning is what I want to talk about. You weren't looking forward to it. What was your trepidation?
Well, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre puts horrible in horror. It's an exhausting experience. And I'm exhausted just thinking about talking about it.
Tobe Hooper's tiny micro-budget little horror movie that's, of all the movies that we've discussed, the horror movies, the least bloody by far.
That's hard to believe. Tobe Hooper was shooting for a PG rating. I'm like, what? How is that even possible? It's so gory. And then people went on to talk about how there's very little on-screen violence and gore. And it just blew my mind because my imagination filled in all those gaps. And I remember this as being a very gory movie. And maybe that's the purpose of the opening shots. I don't know what to call them.
It's pretty disturbing. It's not stylized unless you can call it corpse art. But boy, just those sustained shots, center frame of absolute horror. It's like, oh boy, this is going to be rough.
Right. It's like they're giving you the filler to fill in later.
I've been living with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the last 2 days, doing research and watching it again. It's just kind of filled my life and it makes me feel kind of sick.
Yeah.
But the ratings board agrees with you. Tobe Hooper was like, PG? There's no blood. And they're like, yeah, no, X. Gave it an X rating. It was released, that cut was released in at least a few theaters, and then it was eventually trimmed down and they gave it an R because it didn't make a huge splash, I don't think, right out of the gate. But they played this movie on a yearly basis, like these revivals that made a fortune over time. And people regard it's up there as one of the scariest movies, but not necessarily one of the bloodiest, goriest, except it is in people's imaginations.
Do you think that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is discriminatory against hitchhikers?
Yes. Yes. I mean, it had that effect, actually, which really helped. The police department in Texas thanked the filmmakers, and in particular, the hitchhiker, because they said that there was an 18% decrease in crime because people were afraid to pick up hitchhikers after this movie.
Wow. I mean, I have to say that over the last few days, I've definitely looked at everybody on the street differently, including the nice Asian jaywalker who was wearing a backpack and like put a little pep in his step to get across the street faster to let me make my right hand turn. Yeah. And I'm like eyeing him suspiciously. There was definitely a guy who used to walk in our neighborhood.
The Silver Lake Walker?
You know, in our current neighborhood, the Woodland Hills Walker, he would walk in the morning, presumably to work or school, and he would carry a gallon jug of water in his right hand, like a milk jug, and he had like a backpacker's backpack on his back. In case you don't know how backpacks work. But he would do it faithfully every morning like it was a commute. And sometimes I would look at him, and sometimes he would look back at me, and I was like, ew, that's creepy. He would stare at me like menacingly, like, why are you looking at me? And it would just like exacerbate the situation. Anyway.
I'm walking here.
I mean, poor guy, right? I'm all profiling him. He's allowed to walk to work.
Yeah, I mean, some people need to walk to work and they need to stay hydrated. Good for him. I often think about the last hitchhiker I picked up. I maybe picked up 2 in my entire life, but it's always been in the middle of a city. But it was a scary looking dude outside of a gas station, and I drove him maybe a mile down the road. I don't know what hair I had in my butt, but I picked him up and dropped him off, and it was fine. When people talk about brushes with death, I know that sounds like it's being dramatic, but I was so lucky because I found out that later on so-and-so was a killer, and my neighbor told me that they had been killing people the whole time. When I think about those stories about how people came close to death and didn't even know it, I think about that dude.
Yeah, what would possibly motivate you to do that? Do you have a death wish?
I was like 20 and had nothing to lose, I suppose. And I was in a beater car. I obviously didn't have any money.
I think you were just maybe itching for a little thrill. I've never picked up a hitchhiker, but I've hitchhiked, which is probably no better.
I mean, at the time, not uncommon. It used to be, it was perfectly fine for your girls, kids their age, to walk to school. I certainly did. I was running around at 8 years old doing outlandish stuff. But times have changed and sensibilities have changed.
Really? 8?
Well, talked about Back to the Future, how I went to the theater no less than 8 times with other people on my own when that movie was released.
Well, in terms of hitchhiking lottery, our band of hippie protagonists really hit the jackpot.
The bad jackpot?
Or the bad pot, because wow, that's a bummer.
That's a bummer. That's the poster quote. This is the understatement of the decade for that movie. In the opening monologue, they experienced the biggest bummer in Texas history.
Yeah, I mean, that's really bad luck. The whole thing is kind of bad luck, and I don't know why I don't hold the coincidences against this film. Do you? The bad luck of picking up the bad hitchhiker, the bad luck of choosing the cannibal family house, the bad luck of running to the gas station for help. All kind of convenient.
Well, those are maybe the horror movie conventions that this movie established. Definitely inconvenient. It makes it feel like the whole world has gone absolutely insane, right? There's nowhere to turn, there's nowhere to go, and just seems like there's no escape.
I watched this movie, at least the second half of it, at probably half volume, or like just enough to kind of have like a guide track of what was going on. The sound design was so relentless. It was stressing me out. I couldn't take it. It starts with the news broadcast, and then there's this undercurrent of sound, like the radio or something when they're in the bus, and then the chainsaw. It doesn't matter if he's running or walking or what he's doing, but the chainsaw is buzzing or screaming, just nonstop screaming. In every setting, there was a new relentless bed of sound that I found to be really stressful. And I had to just basically turn off the sound.
Man.
Which didn't really, I don't think, affect the story experience because it's not a audio or dialogue-driven film.
No, and it's fairly simple. You don't need the intricacies of the plot for this one. The Sawyers are pretty straightforward in their methodology. I was surprised to see that Tobe Hooper is director, writer, producer, and also composer, but there's no real music to speak of. He said he wanted the sounds that livestock would hear in a slaughterhouse, like sounds that they would hear on a daily basis, which stood in for the score. But this movie is hugely influential, if for nothing else than for its sound, Silence of the Lambs used a little bit of it. That flashbulb heating up or cooling down or whatever it is, that when he takes the picture, that's so unnerving.
Oh, yeah, the whine.
And the chainsaw, just the noise of the chainsaw. And they've used that to great effect for decades, literally, at Knott's Berry Farm for the Halloween haunt. Those dudes will come charging at you with real chainsaws. And I was always like, how is that okay? How is that legal? And of course, it's just a little motor that they're holding in their hands that would revolve a chain, which isn't even on the device. Right? There's no chain on that chainsaw. It's neither a chain nor a saw. It's just an engine revving up. That's terrifying when I hadn't even seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre yet.
That makes me think of the generator, too, which is pervasive the entire time we're at the, what is it, Sawyer?
Yeah.
Homestead? The sound of the generator is present.
Yeah, do those people live off the grid with a generator?
I mean, I would think that they're trying to do what they can to stay off the radar, but not really. I mean, was Dad being sincere when he was like, yeah, you don't want to go messing around the old Franklin house? Or was it reverse psychology? He says that he has a distaste for killing, but he's obviously a psychopathic maniac.
Yeah, maybe he's aware and okay with it.
Okay with warning them off?
Okay with the things of which he is capable, and they are capable, and is okay with the fact that, you know, if they're going to go to their doom, it's by their own choosing.
I read into it like homicidal mania just skips a generation.
Yeah. It's not completely absent. It's just buried.
Right, exactly. And or he just, allows for it between his dad and the kids. That really bummed me out though when she runs to the gas station. I think I was still harboring a little bit of hope for her at that point, but I immediately knew that he wasn't going to help her because his response just wasn't right. And even though the trucker at the end, I don't think has any dialogue, his response was good enough that he signaled to me that he might help her out.
But who abandoned her and ran for his life and made it.
Did he make it? I felt like there was no resolution for the original trucker.
I had to watch it 3 times. Leatherface is carving up the door, the driver's side door, and instead of driving away, they both bail out the passenger side. She runs around and tries to flag down the truck, and that dude just heads down the road. He bolts and makes it. At least for the purposes of the movie, he's never seen again when he runs down the road.
All right. Well, he's a good shot with a wrench. So I think he's a pretty capable guy.
Yeah, so that was his only defense, and he stopped cold while Leatherface was charging at him. So if that wrench hadn't hit the mark, he would have been toast. And the fact that he stopped and chose to employ that defense when he probably could have outrun that dude, I'm not sure why he did that, but whatever. The nameless trucker is still running down the road in Texas somewhere. 50 years later, this movie, 50 years old, crazy. Why we're discussing it, by the way, 50th anniversary of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
And the request of longtime listener and friend, Brad Calkins.
Good job, Brad.
Shout out to Brad.
And I feel this weird need to be like, yeah, but it wasn't bloody. Yeah, but it was super effective on a micro budget. Yeah, but it stands apart from the others because of this, because of that. But why is it okay? It's perfectly okay, I suppose, for people like the Sneak to be like, that's just something that's never going to be in my life on purpose. Is she missing out? I don't know. But also, what cannot be denied is the torture and victimization of women thing. This movie contains no sex, no nudity. They're dressed like Texas teenagers, Sally in particular, but it's icky how horrifyingly they treat her. They don't have the sense to just bonk her on the head like Kirk or whatever. She's tied up and subjected to finger sucking. And Sally screams. Someone said that she deserves a special Oscar for the craziest, most sustained horror performance in history. She's screaming nonstop and in a constant state of agitation and terror. Talking about being exhausted watching this movie and discussing it. I'm guessing that she had a hard time on set. And the victimization of women is real. This kind of established the last girl trope. It's hard in that way because while gore isn't really a thing, there is some blood, but blood and gore or viscera are different. It's the screaming and the unnerving sounds that really help fill in the gaps for what you don't see in the murders.
Stepping back a moment, I think it's important to understand or to establish or just to speak outright that the basis for this conversation and most critical conversations, I'd argue, about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is that what is worst or bad about this film is what makes it great. It's great, it's classic in its horribleness. But what you're saying is this particular bad part about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, basically the abuse of women, is a bad thing that's not good?
No.
Life is hard, but finding a really great podcast makes the days go by so much easier. Hi, my name is Blue Telusma. I'm a writer, an emotional intelligence coach, and the host of Humanize with Blue Telusma, a podcast where we believe that when you humanize everyone in the room, a great conversation is almost guaranteed. Join us every week here on Electricast as me and my guest co-hosts unpack big topics and interview even bigger personalities with a sense of humor and a dash of mischief. If you're looking for a new best friend in your head, we've got you covered. Electricast.
Hi, it's me, Flo, the annoying clairvoyant from Ghost Hampton, the podcast. We had the time of our lives, or in my case, death, giving all our listeners the willies this summer. You missed Ghost Hampton? No, we can't allow that. Now, all episodes of Ghost Hampton are running on Electricast Media everywhere for free. Ghost Hampton, go there to be frightened, stay there to laugh.
Electricast.
Oh, I am a fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think the problems inherent with any micro-budget movie. They can only do so much. But with what they did comes tremendous impact. People react to this movie in a way that Jaws did. Where you don't really see the shark a lot, but the shark is there and you'd swear you see, the hook going into what's-her-name's back, and you'd swear you see the shark more than anything. Ugh. And Kelly had the same reaction. That scene was too much for her, the hook scene, and to be fair, what's-his-nuts gets carved up while she's hanging, but you don't see any of that stuff. It's really effective. As much as I hate certain aspects of it, I hate it in a way that strangely gets me on board. Franklin is so annoying. I was like, why must he die last? Can we carve him up much sooner and get him dead, please?
You're a little bit relieved when he gets chainsawed.
Oh.
Sally, do you think he's going to follow us?
And the thing where he's like mocking them and spitting and blowing raspberries and stuff, I was like, oh my God, give me a chainsaw right now and I'll take care of this dude.
Was that a 70s thing, the blowing of the raspberries? Or was that a desperate attempt to make our 20-year-old actors seem like teenagers?
Well, he was a kid, but he was annoying top to bottom. Marilyn Burns talks about him between takes being like, Sally, give me a Coke. Sally, make me a sandwich, or whatever he was saying. And she hated him. Cast and crew almost unanimously hated this guy. And then multiple of the surviving stars, many of which are gone now, recounted meeting him later at screenings or events. And he was like, I hope I didn't make you hate me. I had to stay in character. And they were like, what? And he's apparently a lovely, nice guy. And everybody was friends with him at the end. But at the time, a lot of production problems with this movie. The pay situation got wonky. It was a little bit like Night of the Living Dead. Much of the money was taken away from them. The heat and the madness and the smell of the real animals and real blood and meat, the budget problems. So this is a cursed production. And on top of that, some method actor being all annoying, they hated him unreservedly and with good reason. He is a hateful character that deserved to die, in my humble opinion. And I might add, the only chainsaw death in this movie.
Huh. Yeah, I think he gets chainsawed in the face.
I think he gets chainsawed everywhere. Someone said that this movie, I'm paraphrasing, should be called the jumping out the window escape, because that happens twice as much as chainsaw massacres in this movie.
Yeah, you got to be really desperate to jump out the window.
Yeah.
Twice.
The glass windows.
I have a question for you. In your research, did you find out if all of the knife business, Franklin's knife business, was scripted? Because that was unnerving.
In the knife?
In the bus.
Oh.
When he's like cleaning his nails and the knife is constantly out. I'm like just waiting for a bump in the road or for the lock on the wheelchair to come off and like someone to get stabbed.
No, I didn't see that. I mean, but I'm also the dude who's also always playing with a little knife. So it didn't really track that way for me. But interestingly enough, this movie was the least bloody of of this type, and yet arguably the most bloody. There was more real blood in this movie than in any other.
Wait, real blood?
Yeah, this is what turns people on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This, of all things, in real life. Because yes, it's horrible, and yes, people are depraved, and it's like, oh, you love the Texas Chainsaw, that's your favorite movie? There is something wrong with you. But they talked about how horrific it was, how it was 100 degrees in Texas summer heat, how they were locked in this house with real animal carcasses, and the smell was unbelievable. They had huge lights lighting up the infamous dinner scene. They had clothes that they only had one copy of that were stained appropriately. They didn't trust it to be washed because it might wash out the stains or change the color. It couldn't be replicated, and so they wore the same clothes for like 40 days in the Texas heat. Yeah. Marilyn Burns said that her outfit was pretty much solid by the end of the shoot. It was so caked with blood and sweat.
Oh my God. She's like Carrie covered in blood when she's in the back of that truck.
But to say nothing of Gunnar Hansen, who's a big, sweaty dude. My sweaty clothes cannot possibly last more than a day without washing. And people wouldn't go near him. They needed science. They needed Neil deGrasse Tyson or something on the set, because all you have to do is freeze the clothes and it will kill the bacteria. It won't make your clothes any cleaner, but it will kill the bacteria that causes the smell. So every day they should have been freezing those clothes. Anyway, getting back to the story, they talked about the level of madness in filming. Like they felt really mad. Gunnar Hansen said that they were chanting, kill the bitch and stuff when they were probably going to murder Sally. He said she moved at one point and this animal instinct kicked in where he's all sweaty and he's in the mask and can't see anything, and it's been like a 16-hour day or something, where he had an impulse to really kill the actress. And then he moved like instinctively, like a prey instinct kicked in, or predator instinct. And that movement snapped him out of it. And he's like, oh, right, we're not really murdering today. This is a movie. But they went nuts. And by all accounts, when it came time for Grandpa to have his little finger sucking treat, the blood tube wasn't working. It got clogged. And he opened her finger with a knife. And she really bled. And people in this day and age go crazy. Gunnar Hansen's been dead for 10 years, something like that. And people are like, this is assault. This is physical assault. This is not okay. Never okay. Gunnar Hansen cut her finger because it just wasn't working. And by that time, they were so crazed, they needed to get the shot. So at least for that shot, real blood.
I mean, did Marilyn Burns consent?
I don't think so, and that's the big problem. So let's all cancel Gunnar Hansen, who played Leatherface, even though he's been dead for a decade and missed all of Me Too.
I don't know that, I guess touching a body at all without consent is inexcusable.
Yeah.
But,
in service of a movie? I don't know. I mean, they were all, a relatively close team until they weren't, until they hated each other because of pay disputes and things like that, and because of the fact that they smelled so bad. But this is very much The Evil Dead, which would come a few years later. A bunch of kids, Night of the Living Dead style, a bunch of kids in the woods. This is the most successful independent film of its time for, half a decade, until John Carpenter's Halloween came along. Guess the budget in 1974 dollars for this movie.
$74,000.
Close, $100,000, give or take. The exact figures aren't known because of the wonkiness of the booking. But we talked last year about the 50th anniversary of The Exorcist. Landmark in horror, comparable in some ways to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I sourced that budget. Any guesses for 1973 dollars?
I would say considerably more. $1 million?
$11 million.
Wow.
Yeah. And so my math isn't exact, but for dramatic purposes, literally 100 times the budget of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
And arguably not 100 times the impact, although both obviously very influential films.
This is crazy kids doing crazy stuff out in the woods or in a cabin or in a murder house or whatever, and things go off the rails. This is the Wild West. It is unchecked when it comes to this independent filmmaking. I'm not surprised that things went haywire. It's a wonder that nobody did get hurt, even though everybody got hurt. They compared stuff after the fact, and like every cast member was like, yeah, I got really hurt.
Yeah, there's a difference between method acting and abuse. And actors have rights, and that's why movies in part cost so much, because you put safeguards in place to protect your cast and your crew. You limit the number of hours that you shoot. But when you're in a film where it's people coming together to make a thing, and there's a tacit agreement that you will do what it takes to do that, then I guess all bets are off.
I get it. All the safety regulations and stuff put in place, that doesn't mean anything when you're out in the Texas heat and you've got no budget and you're trying to do a thing. You're under immense pressure. And you're all wild and free, you know? Young hearts beat free tonight.
It's all 70s.
Right? I don't know that those rules really apply.
It does seem like there's a general loss of law and order in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? Like the news is all about how the world is going to hell in a handbasket. You know, to your point earlier, at least to our protagonists, the world has gone crazy. There's no safe place to turn.
This movie is definitely a social commentary orchestrated by Tobe Hooper, who is making a political statement about, the news reports and how the world is going to hell and everybody has the potential for craziness. It makes it terribly relevant to today's society. It could be real events. Now, it says that these events really happened. They didn't happen in this way, at least. This is a fictional story, but it's a human story, as inhuman as these people seem. But they're not superhuman. The only real gore on screen is Leatherface being cut by his own chainsaw, and you're kind of okay with that. And there's even very little blood at that. It wasn't gratuitously gory. But consider, this is not Alien. This is not The Thing. Night of the Living Dead. Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Rosemary's Baby, The Omen, The Shining, maybe Friday the 13th. But all of those things are distinctly supernatural. And there's nothing about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre that is overtly supernatural, and in that way it's probably more horrifying.
And necessary for the story to be grounded in reality because of the pretense that this is based on a true story. Although it was influenced by true events, right?
Yep, using real bones and skeleton. Dude, this crew, they had a runner collecting animal corpses to bring to set. The real bones, Ed Gein style. Hopefully that human face lampshade wasn't real. But this was picking up roadkill and using it as set dressing in the heat under the lights craziness.
It makes me just question everything. Did some costumer or props person, I really can't say under what department Leatherface's skin face mask falls under, but did some person sit down and weave eyebrows and eyelashes onto that?
Yeah.
Or was it just some kind of creepy face mask that they acquired in nefarious means? Like, I just question everything in this film now.
You know, there were 3 masks, distinctly different masks. The idea being that there's nothing under the mask. That is, he's incapable of having a personality. He's animalistic, doesn't really talk. Gunnar Hansen studied pig squeals for the noises that Leatherface does make. He only has one human sound, and that's when he cuts himself in the leg, supposedly because that chainsaw was hitting the metal plate over his leg and causing it to heat up. So he really yelled during one of the takes, and they used that audio. So the one that he chases her across into the road and is swinging the thing around at the end is the mother mask, the one that's made up, because that's him dressed up and civilized and sitting down for dinner with the family. That's not the butcher mask or the murder mask. There were 3 distinct masks that Leatherface has, that one being arguably the most horrifying.
Yeah, my bet is on props. that fell to the props department. Bobby Props was all sitting down and and weaving in the eyebrow. I refuse to believe that they had the chicken for eating purposes. That they, it was just for torture purposes. Because this family only ate human meat, right? Or I guess they eat head cheese, unless our hitchhiker is unreliable.
Yeah.
Which he probably is.
I think they were just indiscriminate. They eat whatever meat they can, and the horror of the humans screaming is no different to them than the squealing of the pigs. There were too many animal bones all over the damn place for them not to have eaten some of those animals.
Okay, well, I guess if the Texas Chainsaw Massacre won't make you vegetarian, I don't know what will.
Do you know that this movie legendarily made your boy a vegetarian?
Pedro Pascal's a vegetarian?
Nope. Guillermo del Toro is, though.
Bradley Cooper doesn't eat meat?
I fully accept that this is what happens to certain animals. I'm not giving up meat. I think this brings us to a difficult position. You're in a difficult position. This movie has found a weird place for me. I really respect it, what it was doing, but you're in a position because you hate this movie and hate how it made you feel and have lots of qualms with it, but I don't think you're going to be able to deny its effectiveness over you and over everybody. Let's hear it.
Like Coming to America, the first time these two movies were ever compared, I think it defies ratings.
Nope.
I think that it achieves what it set out to achieve. It's enduring. I don't think that anyone could truly measure its influence. Would I wish it on anybody? No.
Come on. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre goes ham, literally. And if any movie commits, it's this movie. You have to commit out of respect for the 50th anniversary. Is this a good movie?
Oh, come on. That's just silly. It's just silly to say the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is good. Nor is it boring. It's certainly not boring. I mean, in that sense, okay, fine. You can corner me and force me into a good. But I don't want to spend another minute in this world.
Man. But what I'm going to clarify is that while it was affecting, and yes, it made me feel a little bit sick, also scary, when he runs into Leatherface, I think his name is Kirk, at the first time in the doorway, and he slams that metal door. Oh, you get chills. When he's chasing her with the chainsaw roaring, and he's gaining on her. I don't know how that big dude is doing that, but he's right behind her. And then when he's swinging the chainsaw at dawn, and it's just, it sends chills up my spine and is really effective and scary, so that when it drops out, you're just sitting there and it goes to black and the sound cuts out. You're like, whoa.
Oh my God, the scariest moment, aside from meat hooking Pam, is definitely when the hitchhiker is chasing Sally and slashing her back. Like toying with her, where at any moment he can overtake her. And I was so exhausted at that point. And so was that an official totally, Wes?
No, this is an all right rating because totally, no, this is an effective little horror movie, tremendously effective for its budget. But I'm not going to ask anybody like you to see this movie, except you, I guess, because we're celebrating 50 years of one of the most influential. You want the happy ending? You want your happy ending like Shaun of the Dead, spoiler?
Yeah.
Terry McMinn, who plays Pam of the meat hook. She's convinced that her character escaped.
How did she get out of the freezer?
When What's-His-Nuts opened the freezer door, she pops out and she's all blue, but she maintained in her mind, Pam forced her way out of the freezer and escaped and survived this movie.
All right, well, go Pam. I mean, that's good news to me because I was pretty convinced that she was chopped up down there.
And that it was just her torso flailing about?
Yes.
How else would she fit in the freezer?
Exactly. I mean, she either that or she was folded up unnaturally. But they were legs going in the wrong direction on top of her.
Nope. Pam believes, and therefore she is.
Pam lives. Leatherface 5, but at least Pam won.
Yep.
And that's our discussion on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974. A choice piece of meat for Halloween 2024. 818-835-0473. Or orwhatevermovies at gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think, so let us know. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Baclaan.
And I'm Eden Alpert.
We're back with a new season of the Unapologetically Fab podcast, where we're all about living your life by your own design.
From family to business to friendships, we bring on great guests to explore living with intention and passion at any age.
So you fabbers, young and old, listen in as we redefine success and embrace life without apologies.
Please join us on Unapologetically Fab, an Electrocast production.
See you there.
Electrocast.
Dreaming of the perfect event or longing for a clutter-free space? I'm Stephanie with I'm with Steph, where your vision becomes a reality. From magical weddings to transformative home organizing, we bring you expertise and passion to every project. Whether you're planning a grand celebration or seeking peace through organization, we tailor our services to meet your unique needs. I'm with Steph. To explore our services and connect with me directly, visit I'mWithSteph.com. Mention Electrocast for a 20% discount.
Electrocast.